Recording in progress. Okay. Okay, excuse me, now I'm not echoing. Welcome to the March meeting. And now, Pua, are you?
Hello, Kako.
Hey, Mahalo, can you read the vision and mission, please?
Yes, our early learning board vision, creating a sustainable early learning system that partners with families to ensure that every child is healthy, valued, and successful in school and life. Our early learning board mission states to support children's academic and lifelong well-being by directing and supporting the Executive Office on Early Learning for an effective, coordinated, high-quality early learning system from prenatal to kindergarten entry.
Announcements. We have a new EOEL website, so I'm sure people have looked at it, but lots to explore on that. And I meant to say this the last time, that just this point of information regarding testimony to the legislature. So you as an individual board member, you can always submit personal testimony on bills from your personal email. If you are testifying on an early learning bill, it's recommended that you explain you are a member of the early learning board and this is your personal testimony. So, yeah, we all have that ability to do that. So I have submitted some personal testimony, you know, in addition to what we've submitted on the early learning board. So it's good to have that voice. And I just want to remind people that you should have our board members said you should have received a reminder from the State Ethics Commission to submit your annual financial disclosure. And when you get the acknowledgement that you've done that, if you can forward that to Yuko, we're tracking it on our, we have a sheet where we're tracking that. So thank you. It's going to see some, I'm supposed to give this announcement that we'll have, I've had this on my stuff, in my sheet every meeting, and here we go, 8 months later, I finally getting it. Public testimony will be invited with each agenda item, and to help us remember, we put it in the slides. So the invitation to testify will be offered following a report and presentation, and there's a 2-minute time limit for each speaker. Okay. Roll call. Alana Souza.
Aloha.
Lana, are you online?
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you. Thanks. Kau'i is absent. Cheryl.
Here.
Suma. Dr. Suma Gandhi.
Here.
Thank you. Lindsay Pipiak. Thank you. Joni Onishi.
Here.
Thank you. Stephanie Shupton.
Here.
And she's in New Zealand. Thank you for joining us on your vacation. And I'm here. And Dana, Luca?
Here.
Hello. Rochelle is absent. Phil Bossard?
Here.
Napua Rosehill? No, she's here. She read education and mission.
Here.
Keiko for Stephen. No.
Or Matt. Yes, Matt here.
Matt.
Chico's here.
Okay, Keiko's here. Steve Schatz. Stephen. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. And now we have the minutes that have been sent out. Mahalo to Tara. Any edits to the minutes? Corrections? Anybody? Anybody from the board? Minutes? Corrections?
Hi, this is Joni.
Yes.
I don't have any correction, but I just have um, I guess a request. You know that link, uh, section 4, the
Mhm.
link of the presentation from the county coordinators. When I
Huh.
click onto it, it says forbidden.
Oh,
S-
oh, okay.
I think when we did the link, it linked up to our previous website, and so it's probably not linked up correctly on our new website, so we'll update that,
Okay,
so it probably.
Okay,
Sorry, I'll double check on it. Thank
all
you.
right. Thank you. Thank you.
thank you, Joni, for pointing that out.
Yeah.
So you can just do that and get that updated?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Tara. Any other comments? Or corrections on the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
I'll move to approve that as submitted.
Okay, Lindsay has moved, and can I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, thank you. Cheryl has seconded. Thank you. Last chance for comments. Renewable. Alana, Susan?
Aye.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Aye.
Soma?
Aye.
Lindsay?
Aye.
Joni?
Bye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Thank you. So, any comments from the public on our minutes? You were gonna go on. This is just a list of bills that have been, that I've submitted on your behalf, on behalf of the Early Learning Board, the testimony. So the House Budget Bill, which includes the request for the 50 EOEL pre-K classrooms. Senate Bill 423, which is a composition, changing our composition to comply with the Head Start Act. And that actually had another hearing this week, so submitted testimony on that. House Bill 429 is the budget request, which is also, the budget request is also in the House Budget Bill, but this separate bill kind of gives opportunity for more testimony to be submitted in support. And we think Yuko, Executive Director, had a lot of testimony from DOE principals that have EOEL classrooms. So that was a great opportunity to highlight the positive effect and the demand for these classrooms. And then our housekeeping bill is still moving, and which is cleaning up the language on our on the special fund. And then House Bill 692, expanding access to the preschool open doors subsidy. That's still moving. It had a hearing this week. And House Bill 549, apprenticeships, it has a hearing on Monday. So if you are interested in testifying on that, you can still submit testimony. You know, it's kind of unusual that they give, wow, kind of a lot of notice. There's times when it's like 48 hours. Then House Bill 403, which I submitted testimony on behalf of the board, hoping the Sunshine Law would be changed, but that doesn't seem to have been. And House Bill 249, remember, the board did approve the EOEL request to submit a budget request within the House budget, the budget bill for family child interaction learning programs. But that was not included in the governor's budget. So this separate bill had come up, and we submitted testimony, but for now it's not moving any further. I think that was it for me. Anything? Oh, any comments from the board on bills? Any questions? Yes,
I'm
Phil.
just curious on that sunshine law thing. I mean,
Yes,
if everybody doesn't really know what everybody else is doing, if a bunch of us show up at the same place without knowing it, do some of us have to go home or what?
I would say make like you don't know. That's a good question. We would handle that as it came up. But yeah, good question. Yeah, that's why it's kind of clunky. I mean, understand the intent, but it gets a little clunky to comply sometimes. So, yeah, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, we'll go on. So it's, Hugo's turn. I'll stop sharing.
You know what? Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for everybody who's here in person. It's nice to see people. And Jen, I was actually looking and it said legislative updates first on this. And I apologize, I did not switch the order of our slides, but how about Jen, I'll pull your slides up first and we can do that and then I'll go back into the regular one.
Jen, is this the first meeting you've come to in person or the second? Okay, okay, great,
Yeah,
thank you.
Ian and I were just
I
talking
s-
about.
okay,
So,
I just wanted to
some
make
of you
sure.
I've met already and some of you I haven't. I had a nice opportunity to meet Alana at an event last week, so that was nice. And our board chair covered a lot of what I was gonna talk about, so thank you. That's fantastic. Yuko brought up the slides, you know, kind of giving you an updated information about the progress of some of our priority bills. But before we get into that, I just wanted to give a little bit of context for folks. Last week, Thursday was the first crossover deadline, which was, it's a big deadline in the legislative session. It was the last day for the originating chamber to pass bills they introduced on third reading and transmit them to the non-originating chamber. So what that means is that all the Senate bills that have not yet been passed out of the Senate and transmitted to the House are no longer, you know, able to be considered this session. Okay, and then vice versa for all the House bills that were introduced. They didn't make it out of the House by now, then they're not going to be able to be considered for the rest of the session. So you'll see some X's, right, in the slide showing you which ones, you know, got held up along the way. So to give you an idea, you know, Lane very capably went over the updates for you folks at the last meeting. And I think he mentioned that we had over 3,000 bills introduced this session, right? So of those 3,000 bills introduced, only 378 House bills and 390 Senate bills met this crossover deadline that just passed last week. So that means that roughly 75% of the bills introduced are effectively dead for this year. But it's important to note that because the legislature operates on a biennium schedule, bills that don't meet the relevant deadlines this year would still have an opportunity to become law again next session without being reintroduced. Okay. Now, if they still don't make it out by the end of next session, then they are like 100% dead. So that gives you a little bit of context within which you can kind of view our progress. I think it's very optimistic. I think we're looking good considering the situation. You can see that most of our priority bills have had at least one vehicle cross. And by vehicle, I mean, you know, sometimes there are two identical bills or very similar bills that get introduced, one House bill and one Senate bill. So in this case, it's not unusual at this point in time to see only one of the two continuing to move forward and meeting deadlines and being scheduled for hearing and passed along. So, you know, as Chair Yamashita mentioned, House Bill 249, which was the funding for Family Child Interaction Learning Program, this was the only bill that we were had listed as a high priority item that isn't moving, that didn't meet the crossover deadline in at least one vehicle. But since this request is not requiring statutory changes, so that by that I mean no changes to the permanent laws, it's just a straight funding appropriation bill. Ways and Means could still choose to include this funding in the Senate draft of the budget. That is still a possibility. And then, you know, I think Chair took the words right out of my mouth about how having this additional duplication of the funding for our pre-K expansion has been such a lovely opportunity to highlight and promote the program and share with people the positive impacts of the program on individual schools and their communities. So if anybody's interested, I would encourage you to read through the written testimony from the February 20th House Finance Committee hearing and the March 12th Senate Education. And then we wanted to highlight, I think, some of the biggest news for at this point is that that same funding was also included in the House draft of the budget that just crossed yesterday. So that's a big deal. The funding was included in the budget in addition to also the continued movement of House Bill 429. So we actually have two possible vehicles for that funding moving at this point in session. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, and we'll pause there if anybody has any questions. So thank you so much, Jen. And I'm going to take us back up to the top. And again, this portion is reporting on the roadmap that our board created. And the first part is addressing the workforce. And is Ian here? Yeah.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Ian Portal, Workforce Development Specialist with ELB. This month, I'll just actually kind of continue on in terms of legislative updates pertaining to the workforce. The Early Learning Apprenticeship Grant Program bill, as already been mentioned, I think by Chair and Jen, I touched on this as well. The House Vehicle HB 549 is still alive and will be will be discussed in a joint committee meeting on Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. This is the Higher Education and Education joint session. And so that's still moving. The Senate version, SB 426, didn't meet the crossover deadline, and so we just have the one vehicle at this moment for the apprenticeship grant program.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then also want to share that we are continuing to accept applications for our early childhood educator stipend program for the fall term. And in fact, we have 2 different info sessions to offer to support people in applying for this program. We have a session actually this afternoon at 5:30. And this afternoon session is primarily for our community-based folks. And then we'll also have another info session on Monday, the 31st. That'll be at 3:30, and that is more for our EOL and public school folks. Yeah, and so we have applications for summer session open until the 15th.
Thank you very much. And then is Uday or Caitlin on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
This year for the public pre-K program, our focus for professional development sessions were on supporting positive behavior strategies within the classrooms. And so some of the subtopics that came up through the teacher work groups, as well as the large group sessions that were addressed, were brain development and executive function, proactive and responsive behavior supports, authentic assessments related to pre-academic and socio-emotional, all the domains, supporting social, emotional, language literacy, math and motor development, and considering positive behavior supports during those timeframes. So.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about that portion? Thank you. So now we're moving on to action item number 2, which is facilities. And I wanted to give this update regarding the schools that are interested in opening up an EOEL public pre-K in the near future. And so right now, our goal is to open 25 rooms this upcoming fall and 25 rooms the following fall. Of course, this is all pending funding that's moving concurrently during this legislative season. However, the School Facilities Authority has assessed these current sites that we see in front of us right now and has cleared them for minor renovations. So the green will be renovated this summer and the beige will all be renovated next year. There were many other sites that were interested, but for many different reasons, the facilities assessment didn't pass whatever those requirements were. And so there's been a lot of moving around, but right now we have these 24 set here. Hanalei was originally a part of this set of the 25. They've asked to push it off a year. And so Hanalei is now interested in opening next year. And Kealakehe High School will be the first, although we have the Kana, which goes all the way to high school, but Kealakehe will be the first high school that will have a program directly connected to their career tech ed program, which is about teaching as a profession and learning support professionals. And then once we get cleared over this legislative period that we are now and ensure our funding, then we will start to push in to identify the rest of the sites, maybe that additional 25th room, and then also the rest of the sites for the following year. Right now, the School Facilities Authority has let us know that the set of 50 rooms that we're asking for to be considered for in this biennium request will be the last minor renovation rooms completed by SFA. So this is the last set of 50 for minor renovations. So minor renovations mean using a vacant space on a DOE campus and converting it to an early learning space. Their strategy is going to shift to hubs. And so this is just a visual of where they're looking at, taking a look at workforce, numbers of seats, numbers of children, traffic patterns, and many other things. So these are the areas that they're targeting for hubs. And so the School Facilities Authority defines a hub as a 4 to 8 unit, 4 classrooms to 8 classroom unit that can service children from the community. It's not school specific. So it could be on a school campus and it also could just be on a state property space. And this is the next phase that they're going to be shifting into. And as we learn more information about how they're making progress on that, I will bring it back here and share it with the board.
I have a question,
Yes.
regarding the hub. So are those going to be run by EOEL or will they be put out for
Yeah.
contract?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So they have some that are identified on school sites. And so the ones that have been identified on school sites, I've reached out to the school level and complex area leadership to ask, what are they asking for in those spaces? Are they asking them to be EOEL? Are they asking EOEL to assist with contracting out people to occupy the space? Or in some cases, the counties are working with the school site to do some kind of county program on their property. So they are all very different, and I actually do not have solid concrete
Right,
answers.
but at
for
least
any of them.
there's a range, it's not,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so there
Yeah.
are different options. that are-
Absolutely.
Okay,
Mhm.
it's great.
And EOEL has lots of flexibility in that, as you know, because of the legislation that was passed our prior year, that now lets us contract out spaces, whether they're on DOE or off DOE property, to any community provider.
Okay. Great, that's good to know, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions about this portion? This part was about funding, and Jen already gave a lot of the updates to the space that we're sitting in right now in terms of trying to secure funding for the early learning system. So I'm going to just move on beyond that. And then now we're looking at quality improvement and maintenance. And this was the paper that was sent out by Chair Yamashita. And this is Remy's work. So Remy, feel free to go ahead and explain this to us.
Thank you, Yuko. Hello, everyone. This is the an update on I've presented a couple of months ago the impact of the EOEL program for schools that had the program implemented compared to similar schools that didn't have the program on the kindergarten entry assessment. And so if you recall, I mean, I've shown that the program has had a kind of a substantial impact overall, shifting scores from the emerging category, which is the lowest readiness level, to the demonstrating readiness category, which is the highest one. And this update here regards the developmental domains of the kindergarten entry assessment. We obtained this data thanks to the diligence of DGA at DOE. So here you see the four developmental domains that the KEA includes. So language literacy, mathematics, physical well-being and motor development, and social foundations. So, on the whole, we can see that we can observe that the program EOEL has an impact on all of the domains, which is kind of interesting, but more significantly on language and literacy. And on mathematics. The social foundations and the physical well-being, motor development, is a little bit, the estimations are a little bit less precise, quite possibly because those domains are, I mean, my interpretation is because this could be partly due because those domains are observed kind of assessments, whereas language and literacy and mathematics, those are assessed for the most part directly, like a performance test. So this is encouraging to see this, in particular for the quote unquote non-cognitive skills, because as you might know, there is the fade out effect that on those particular skills where you have you have an impact at kindergarten entry, and then after that that impact is a bit fading away as children progress through the grades on those specific skills, because all of the children sooner or later are gonna kind of catch up. But for the physical well-being and motor development and social foundations, those skills might be actually a little bit more persistent across time. And so it's encouraging to see that EOEL programs had an impact on those skills as well.
Thank you, Remy. And so does anybody have any questions about Remy's portion? Well, thank you, Remy, for keeping an eye on the progress of the schools that are hosting EOEL public pre-K programs, and starting to put together this longitudinal study so that we can keep an eye on how we're doing.
That's great.
I just want to give an update on the health, mental health and nutrition. This is from Mikako. She's not on island right now. But she was able to translate the English version of our informational booklet around dental health into multiple languages. And now it is now being added to our toothbrush kits that we do give out at outreach events. And it has been shared with the Hawaii Dental Service Foundation for their use as well. And so we're really excited about publishing that information to help with oral health for all of our families. And if anybody else is interested in getting a hand on some of that, just please let us know and we can also share it with you too. Does anybody have any questions about that portion? And here are some system updates. The one thing that I wanted to highlight to the board is we learned about this strategic data project from Harvard Center on Education Policy Research. And we looked into it and we learned that the Hawaii Department of Education had a partnership with Harvard for a project similar to this. And so we applied to see if we could become a partner and then have Remy then therefore be considered and called a fellow to help with an educational policy question that we're trying to answer. And after we went through an interview just a few weeks ago, we learned that we were selected. And so it is a 2-year project. And Remy, if you want to just speak briefly about the main goal of the project.
Sure. Well, the strategic data project is kind of a partnership with the Harvard Center for Education Policy Research that comprise a wealth of experts in different sectors of data governance and data integration and data for policy. We proposed, we developed an application for this partnership, highlighting our goal to design a blueprint for data governance regarding early childhood development. And this is an ambitious project, and we hope that thanks to the various expertise we're going to have both on a different level, you know, the legal expertise, policy expertise, and more like a technical expertise for the data, collection, warehousing, security, privacy, and integration. So we hope that we're going to be able to advance the objective for EOEL to have a more kind of a comprehensive and integrated early childhood development data system.
Thank you, Remy. The other thing that I wanted to highlight that also happens to do with Remy is that he was nominated as our early career interdisciplinary scholar fellow for the Society for Research and Child Development, and he's going to be able to present some of his work and his analysis on EOEL's effectiveness, as he mentioned just very, very briefly that point prior. And he'll be presenting this work at the biennial conference in May at Minneapolis. So we're excited. We're excited for Remy and to also highlight the good work that's going on in Hawaii.
Congratulations. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Remy. And Ku'ulei, are you still on? Or
Yeah.
Caitlin?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So just for March, the beginning of March opens the beginning of our new school year enrollment, and our online system is up and running. We've had the opportunity to do training with all of our schools about the way that we're going to implement and utilize the online system. Families still have the opportunity to turn in paper applications if that's their preference. However, all of our correspondence with the schools will come through this online portal. And so we're looking forward to a quicker response time and space for families to be notified about opportunities for enrollment and or the processing time for back and forth exchange of applications to be shortened. So the application season opened March 3rd for all current classrooms. And so from March through July, the enrollment process will be schools receive either paper applications. EOL will look through all of the online applications. If schools have paper, they will come to us following the school's initial overview, and then, but they will all be housed in the online system. Approved applications are also always on a first come, first serve basis with prioritization for homeschool geographics as well as priority categories. After July 1st, process applications will continue to be on a first come, first serve basis. And schools at that point may begin to look at children who are beyond their geographic homeschool areas. And it's similar to our same process that we have had throughout, that homeschool and priority categories are looked at first, as well as in the time frame of applications being received. And then lastly, again, paper applications are still available. We are encouraging families to apply online as they are able, but updates have been made to the online system to support more efficient processing of applications. This is more of the specifics on how families can access applications for the online system. Once a family applies into the system, our review team can access that application immediately, and all communications with the family will be done through email notification. When the application has been reviewed, then we will submit that to the schools. The schools will get notification that the application has been reviewed and approved. And then the school at that point will get notification through the online system. And then they can offer families enrollment at that point in time. On the paper side, it's similar. It's just an additional step because families will need to bring their application directly to the school. And then the school will verify paperwork, including birth date information and supporting documentation. That information will then be pouched and delivered to our office. And at that point, again, we review for documentation. And once that application review is complete, it will be uploaded into the online system. And the notification to schools will be through the online system. So we're not, prior to this, if you were not aware, prior to this, paper applications went to the school, got pouched to our office, they were reviewed by our office, and then returned to the school by a pouch. So the time frame for response and knowing when families had completed and approved applications, it just delayed based off of the pouch system because we did have sensitive information coming through the applications. And so this system will help us efficiently look at applications. Lastly, about paper applications, if families did choose to use a paper application, their correspondence from the school will be also by paper. So they won't be getting a notification online if they did not use that way to apply. And this is just updates on as of March 4th. I do know that this number is larger currently, but March 4th was the first day. And we had, at the end of that day, we had over 300 re-enrollment forms, so Keiki, that are currently enrolled and planning to return next year, and almost 400 online applications. So that doesn't include any of the paper applications that schools received that have started to also come through.
Thank you, Kubalay. Thank you. I'll stop at a certain point after this systems update section and people can ask questions. I just wanted to highlight that our office did attend a childhood homeless symposium. And it was really excellent. It was the first of its kind. Oh, Tara, did you want to speak to this? Great. Okay. Tara attended with me. It was the first of its kind gathering that brought together all the homeless service providers, organizations that serve children and families, advocates, policymakers, and many other people who are looking at ensuring children have a home. And this was one of the breakout sessions that people were able to attend. But our team really enjoyed this event, and they enjoyed the connections that they made with other people who are serving children. And now we're thinking about new ways to kind of push in to assist with outreach to these families. So this is PDG updates. Sure. So Lane will just give brief updates on where we're at with our PDGB5 grant. So activity 2 is updating the early childhood state plan. Oh.
So so as the slide indicates, activity number 2 of so the activity number corresponds to the application that we put in with the Federal Administration for Children and Families that granted us the preschool development grant, renewal grant. So activity number 2 is updating the statewide early childhood plan. So West Ed has been selected to help the EOEL, ELB, and the preschool development grant process to update the early childhood state plan. So the work began at the end of January 2025. Engagements are going to be planned to gather comment and feedback from stakeholders as we move along in the process. So part of the process will be coordinating the actual updating of the physical draft, so the wording and the text and, all of the elements of the plan. And that later on towards the middle of the year will be where there will be engagements planned so that the public and other stakeholders can provide comment and feedback of whatever is in that draft that comes out. And the update of the early childhood state plan is expected to be completed by the end of the year, December 2025. So, and this activity number 3 corresponds to the application, which is maximizing parent and family engagement in the birth through 5 system. So with this particular item, Hawaii Children's Action Network is currently has been engaged to do a family engagement campaign. And as part of that campaign, there's going to be a family eligibility screener that helps families identify the programs that can support their families upon application and acceptance into those programs. So this particular program that HCAN is working on is modeled after the First 5 South Carolina and First 5 Nevada websites, which contain systems. So if you go onto these slides, I believe that the link, I think it might be accessible, but if not, those are the actual website addresses for these 2 programs. So what First 5 South Carolina, I believe, was one of the first in the nation to do this, but they have an eligibility screener where the families can click onto that, as you can see in the box down there. It says, check your eligibility for services. You can click on that box, fill out the fields, and at the end of that process, it will identify all of the services for South Carolina's case, South Carolina, that those families are eligible to possibly apply for and maybe be awarded. But for each of those services, they have to go to the individual services. But I think the value added through these websites is that you don't have to necessarily go through each of the individual sites and figure out, am I eligible for supplemental nutrition assistance, women and children, so WIC, temporary assistance to needy families. It's all in one place. So you just fill in your information and it'll identify everything that's available within the state. So as part of the HCAN work, they have secured a working relationship with 37 Years, and 37 Years is the website developer that developed the First 5 South Carolina website and the First 5 Nevada website. And I believe there are other First 5s, but the intention of this working arrangement is that HCAN, once we get to the spot that is going to be similar to South Carolina and Nevada. It's also going to be identified as a First Five Hawaii website. So all of the branding, so to speak, is going to be First Five. So there'll be a First Five South Carolina, First Five Nevada, and then Hawaii will add it on as the First Five Hawaii website, and it will do something similar, but tailored specifically to the programs in Hawaii.
Thank you. Thank you. And so I know that section had a lot of different kinds of information, just basically the bigger, broader system updates that are happening in our office. And so if anybody has any wonderings or questions, feel free to ask.
I did want to say mahalo for having the paper and the online and really being sensitive to families not being able to access technology as easily. So that's really great. And then, you know, when the number of applications that have been received for classrooms, yeah. So does that online include the re-enrollment forms, or those are two separate?
Those are separate
Oh, wow, so actually like 600 something
in the first day.
in the
Yeah.
first day. Wow, thank you. And I also wanted to say thank you for the partnership with HCAN and how they're really working with the families. And so this is what we want to see, that we're all working together. We're leveraging the resources, you know, organizations are partnering so that we can maximize our influence. And so that's really great. We really appreciate the work that's being done.
Oh, yes, and then that's the end of that,
Okay,
that portion.
okay.
There is that next.
I was
section.
gonna ask if anybody on the
Yes.
board had any
Yeah.
comments or questions.
I just had a quick question. So regarding the paper applications, I presume that they're date and time stamped
Yes,
because it's
Yes.
okay, just make.
yes. This, once the school receives it, they
Correct,
can
yeah.
timestamp it. And then when it gets to our office, the
Correct.
date and timestamp.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
I knew you guys were doing that.
Yeah. So that is the updates portion. The next portion that I want to move into is about the state plan, the planning preparation, the creation, the implementation of it. And I wanted to open it up. After I'm gonna kind of just go through some slides, I'm gonna pose some questions, because I'm wondering what the relationship of the state plan is to the board, or how they want to interact with the state plan and how they see it fitting into the larger system. And so I wanted to kind of just walk us through some things. So I was not in this role when the first state plan came through. There's some people here who were around and there's some people here who were not. So I just wanted to kind of just walk through some things. So this is the early childhood state plan. And it was, and you can see it's dated 2019 to 2024. And if you do not have a copy of this, or you want to have a copy, it is on our website, but we are also able to send it directly to you. And so this is what we're in the process of updating at this point in time. Right on the first pages of the state plan, you're going to see the sign-offs by the former chair of the Early Learning Board, as well as the former director of the Executive Office on Early Learning. And it kind of talks about, you know, this is our community's plan. We look forward to bringing everybody together to work on the plan. And then it talks a little bit about the Early Learning Board, Executive Office on Early Learning. Later, what was created was the strategic implementation plan. So you had the state plan, and then there were created strategic implementation plans. And on the inside cover of that, you'll again see a sign off by the chair of the Early Learning Board and the former director of the Executive Office on Early Learning. And just talking about, first we started with the plan, and then now we're moving into these 7 strategic implementation plans. And there's a little check checkbox alignment between the state plan and the strategic implementation plans. There's also another packet that has the strategic implementation plans, and you can see it's overview 2020 to 2023. And again, another comment on the front page of that has a sign off by the former chair, former executive director of the Executive Office on Early Learning. And again, talking about we both successfully completed a multi-stakeholder planning process that resulted in the state plan. And then after that, ELB and EOEL focused their collective efforts on moving this into action. Going along with that, it kind of states setting the stage for action in early care and education. And then one thing that's interesting on the right side is the state advisory council members. And I think that this is a language term that maybe could have started to cause a little bit of confusion about who is the state's advisory council, because you'll still see that some of these people were board related people, and then there's also other people. And so I don't know if that term kind of caused some of it. I'm not really sure, because again, I was not here. But this is, you can see it in the documents that it calls this the state's advisory council. And then again, at the top of each of the strategic implementation plan documents, there's this statement here that talks about the early learning board and executive office on early learning kind of created this process to bring us here. And so that's just a brief review of what exists now. And where it's talking about, here's the board, here's EOEL, here's the board, here's EOEL, this is our plan, this is kind of what happened. I'm gonna shift just a little bit to the state's advisory council, as we now know, is the early learning board. And so this is a snippet that just comes straight out of the Head Start Act. And in the Head Start Act, it says, conduct the periodic statewide needs assessment. And so that comprehensive needs assessment was actually completed as part of our PDGB 5 work. We don't yet have a final copy, but that is going to help to influence the creation of our next state plan. But you can look at this, identify opportunities for collaboration and coordination, develop recommendations for participation of children, unified data collection system, professional development, looking at higher institutions, and looking at standards, So these are things that come straight out of the Head Start Act. And then this is just a very unique visual, but it was in the office when I got to the office. And so whether it is or is not or not true, or I'm not really sure, or where it came from, I don't really know. But this is why I'm trying to host the conversation right now, because I'm trying to clarify what is the relationship of the state's plan to the board and to EOEL, and how do we want to move forward together to do this? Because my initial impression is I don't think that this is what it is. I don't think so. When you see like it's kind of off on the side. And so I don't know really where this came from, but it was left in the office when I first got there. And so trying to piece together what is the relationship of this plan to both of us. So I have just 3 questions, and I'll kind of go through all of them so you can kind of see what's coming up next, and then I'll go back to the first one. So my first wondering is, how can the state plan, goals, and progress metrics best inform the early learning board in formulating statewide policy related to early learning, since that is the role of the board? The second question I have is, how can we integrate the current roadmap into the updated state plan? And the reason why I'm asking that is because I have to report on progress on the roadmap. And so how does that, or does it fit into this work with the state plan that we're creating now? And then the last part is, what is the relationship of the board to this new state plan? So will the board be included in the committees that are creating the content of the plan? And then we'll have a formal presentation to the board for adoption? Or does the board want to kind of stay separate from this development process? And then just kind of be updated, give some feedback, and then have adoption? So these are the questions that I wanted to pose just to help with clarity. And I'll just come back to the first one, or however, Chair, you want to go out of order or whatever you think you want to do. But I appreciate that the chair gave me this time and space to be able to ask these wonderings out loud. And then I just want to kind of just lay it and sit there to hear what people think about how we interact, how we create and also interact with this state plan.
I do have a question before we get into it.
Sure.
Because PDG is federal grant money.
Yes.
Has it been impacted by any of the executive orders?
So we just got notice that our refunding application was approved. So that is still there. There have been requests to look at language, so everybody knows if you have federal, any kind of connections, you know that there's certain words that you have to choose new words for. And so there is some of those recommendations going around out there, but it has not been pulled yet.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And also just having the state plan is something we have to do. I have to do it. And so I've already been working with our business management officer that if something gets yanked or pulled, I am going to continue to ensure that it happens by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you for looking ahead. And I also wanted to add to what Yuko said about the current state plan, or, you know, we went to the end of 2024. You know, we've now our board meetings, we have some time for discussion. You know, the first part was like insane, right? Trying to get all these policies, and I had this item on the agenda that we never got to, was about the state plan. It was like, here's what it says in the current plan about early learning board, and how do we want to, you know, and we hadn't really talked about it. And so, what I do know though is that when the legislature asked the previous board to provide it, what is the board's plan? The board said, the state plan is the board's plan, because why make a separate plan? I mean, you know, so I think the question is, you know, Yuko has been talking to me about how do we get the board engaged? Because if we're not engaged in some way, how do we feel any ownership of it? You know, as we go forward, because we have to, we really want to make sure things move. So that's why these, I appreciate Yuko bringing the questions up, and this is why we don't have the answers, so that's what we're asking. For your, for people's manao on how we do this effectively, because we haven't, so that we are really more aware of the state plan, and we are engaged and understand what our role is in relation to the state plan. So this first question, how do you think the state plan goals and progress metrics best inform the early learning board in formulating statewide policy?
Thank you, Yuko, for sharing. I am wondering if you can share what your, I think you said the timeline. What is your timeline and your identified process for the creation of the 2025 Beyond State Plan? That might help.
Okay, yeah, thank you so very much. So as you know that we have contracted Wested, I can't quite pull up the mapping of the timeline at this moment, but I can definitely send it to the board. And again, this is not a voting decision-making thing. This is just for open dialogue. So I can send it to the board members so you can see the timeline. But actually, we just had a pre-planning meeting last week. We're gonna meet face-to-face next week with some people who are part of the core PDGB5 timeline, the PDGB5 application team. And we're going to start to dig into what that engagement could look like. So we're not talking about the details of it, but just broader, oh yeah, engagement. Okay, oh, so she found it. Okay, perfect. So there's, so we have introductory meeting, they're reviewing documents. We're gonna finalize some committees and talk about who should be involved in some committees that are coming up. And then they're going to start to facilitate some in-person meetings. And so this is the original timeline that they presented to us, a little bit of a contract delay. And so they're looking to have it completed at least by November or December of this year. So I will definitely have more concrete information after we actually sit together next week for a couple of days to plan this out. But basically, there's going to be engagement opportunities, there's going to be review opportunities, there's going to be looking at the document review. So we're looking at the comprehensive needs assessment, we're looking at the RAND study that's been coming up, we're looking at rapid family results. If we're gonna be looking at the prior state plan, prior feedback from everybody, and also identifying other things that we should be looking at in terms of the document review next week. And then we're gonna try to figure out how we're gonna chart our way forward then.
And just to let the board know, Yuko has invited me to sit in on the first two meetings, and I do feel it's appropriate for the board chair to be engaged in the plan. So, that's gonna be happening. But we also need to know how everybody else, what are you guys' thoughts?
Is the plan something that exists between your office and the board, or does it have to be approved by the legislature when it's done, or?
Yeah, so it does not have to be approved by the legislature. It was adopted by the governor. But like I said, I'm not aware of like how that happened
Okay.
or, but I know that the board did adopt the plan and then it was adopted by the governor because there was a big signing of it. We have pictures of that.
Sure, stood in his office, right? The executive.
So, right, yeah, actually, so somebody else just asked me that too. So we're actually not in the governor's office. We are administratively attached to the Department of Education.
office.
So we
It started in the
maintained
governor's
our
office.
name, but we are not there.
Somebody had a comment online? on Zoom?
Yeah, so I guess my instinct on this, right, is that the board adopted the plan, but then never managed to it, really. It was sort of like updates were given, but it felt separate, right? And then the awkward part for Yuko and us as a board, I think, is we would be adopting a plan about which we don't have authority. Right? Like some of the stuff we have authority over, and some of the stuff we only have influence over, right? But I guess for me at P20, that's like a very familiar setting for me because we don't really have much authority. But we try to lead and we try to have influence. And so for me, in the context of this, this plan, I wouldn't want it to sit outside or not be embraced by our board. I wouldn't want it to be something that felt separate. And on the other hand, we have to make sure that we don't overstep our authority, right? Like, so we're trying to influence folks. We're trying to manage and monitor and shine a flashlight on stuff, but that doesn't mean we get to tell DHS what to do, or I represent UH. You don't get to tell UH what to do. Like, so, but I do think it would be a missed opportunity if the plan itself sat outside of the formal mechanism for early learning in the state. And then the other thing I was thinking about in the context of this is like the early learning statute is also super vague and also gives like the responsibility to do a whole bunch of stuff that's probably outside the authority, right? It's coordinating all of early ed, right? Whether or not Yuko actually has any authority to do so, the statutory responsibility is there. So to me, you'd have an alignment between the vagueness of the statute or the aspirational aspect of the statute and the aspirational, you know, and an aspirational plan that may go beyond what the official authority of the institution or the office has. I don't know if I was making that clear, but it's a long way of saying I think the simplest solution is probably the best, which is maybe we adopt the plan. And I mean, at the end of the day, though, it would rely on Yuko to lead us through it, right? We're not gonna. We all have different jobs, like day jobs, and folks are retired, and some people are doing this and that. So like, the moments at which the board gets engaged and the content on which we get engaged would have to be led by Yuko, I would think, in the context of the plan.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing previous, people who have been on the board. It's really really useful to hear your perspective because I'm new. Yuko is fairly new. I'm thinking that the state plan can help as we develop it, because we've been looking at a mixed delivery system policy. And really what I'm envisioning for that is that it really articulates what we are wanting to do, collaborate, coordinate, what statute is telling us. Yeah, we don't have authority over everybody, but we can work together for the good of our keiki and their ohana. So I really feel like we're a small state. Some bigger states have made some really big strides. I think we can do this, It really depends on the people and the relationships that are built between all these different entities. So I'm looking forward to that being kind of a focus that we have to work together. We have to build those relationships so people can work together. There's going to be issues. How are issues going to be worked out? How are those funding issues? With a lot of uncertainty in the air, I think there's going to be a lot of, there might be some fighting for funding. How are we going to help prioritize that or give some kind of viewpoint on that? We don't have yet, authority over everything, but we can give informed viewpoints through how we develop policy. And I think that if we have an articulated policy, at least, we do have an articulated policy on workforce development that was created by the previous board, which is great. And if we can get to a mixed delivery system policy that can also help the legislators see where we're wanting to go and how we are hoping to see all of these different entities, because we have a complex system of systems and how we make it all work together. So thank you, Steve, for that, for those thoughts.
Elena, I just want to jump in and also add, when Yuko was sharing her questions and some of the context with us, she mentioned that, we have the roadmap, we have the old state plan, we have these strategic implementation plans. And I think this is an opportunity to think about how are we consolidating and combining the things that matter the most? So if the roadmap is the things that matter the most, how is that encompassed within a state plan that not just drives our policymaking, but also helps guide this board and future boards and how we think about advocacy at the legislature and the ways in which we engage with the rest of the system. So a little bit beyond policy into advocacy and ways of being. But I think it would be a mistake if, as EOEL is working on the roadmap, if we were to leave that separate and not consolidate into a document.
So thank you, Stephanie, for that. I'm trying to be mindful of my time. And again, I appreciate the feedback. This is just for a dialogue, so I appreciate all the comments that are being made. I'm taking lots of notes. And Stephanie did talk about this hoping to consolidate the current roadmap and the state plan and trying to just pull it together. And then I think
Yeah.
Steve's kind of spoke to this a little bit, in terms of, you know, like having it, not wanting it to sit outside. Chair kind of spoke about being involved and where we basically trying to go. And so I'm just wondering, and the reason why some of these questions came up is after we finally secured and executed this contract with Wested, they're like, how is the board gonna be involved? So that's where, you know, we started this conversation, but I guess this is one thing that I'm wondering about, and I don't wanna take too much more time, because now I'm 1 minute over this period, but if anybody has any comments on this slide, I would love to hear it.
Yeah. Let's see, what
I'll just,
Stephanie, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was involved when Governor Ige did that state education plan. And that committee, having at least one board member on each committee that was hearing the discussions and stuff. So that when it came back to the whole board, at least one person had a lot of context.
Okay.
So I guess I would say it's helpful. It takes up our time, so I don't wanna put everybody to work, but when you have a board member that's listening to all the conversation, you have context.
Great, thank you.
Something I'm thinking about with our new structure for the board is that we, you know, each of us represents different communities. And so in thinking about the development process, to what extent are we also contributing some of the voices or perspectives from the communities that we represent? I think it could be helpful to solicit board volunteers who want to and are able to engage in the committee work, but not make it necessarily a requirement for all board members.
I also wonder, once you chart the timeline and the process and what content needs to happen at different parts, you might be able to, in conjunction with what Stephanie is sharing, ask the board who has not only their geographic perspective, but content perspective that would help EOEL in defining the state plan so that you're leveraging that as well. So it's not just about a joint sense of ownership, but also what are our talents and skills in and expertise in certain places, because I think we all have that in different portions of this collective work.
I'm hearing more that the board should be involved in some way, rather than, oh, just let it happen and tell us what to do. So that's what I'm hearing. And we wanted to just start getting everybody's thoughts on this, so that as we move forward in the state plan, we do it well. So,
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, thank you so much for your feedback and for your deep thinking and consideration. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and keep thinking, and as we, we can keep talking about this as we go on. So thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's time for a break.
It's reduced to 5 minutes.
That's okay. So we'll come back at 5 minutes to 3, 10-minute break. And then we have a presentation from EOEL and DHS. Thanks. So, looking at to EOEL and DHS.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. Chair asked DHS and I to talk about our Act 46 report. But our team is a little bit broader than just DHS and ELEL. So I wanted to share that we do have Dr. Lauren Podesky in the room too. So she'll come and jump in and join in on a few slides with us. And so EOEL and DHS, let me just go through the slides so I can explain it to you. So the Act 46 report has two major sections. One is the benchmark report on preschool capacity for 3 and 4-year-olds. And the other is the report on the progress made to increase that capacity. The latter section discusses the progress made on 4 subsections like seats and capacity, accessibility and affordability, workforce development, and data collection and analysis. So all the responsible agencies continue to work together to address the resource needs, and to work together to propose additional policy changes to move Hawaii towards an accessible, affordable early learning system. And so one thing I want to do is say a great shout out to Mikako from EOEL. She's like the coordinator of all people and reminds everybody like, hey, we need to start working on our report. So she'll start to email out everybody. So EOEL's portion of this is the EOEL public pre-K, and we talk about family child interaction learning programs. Then we have DHS, who's our partner. They talk about licensed and registered providers. The Department of Education, so we have Dr. Lauren Podesky with us here today. They kind of shed light on SPED and migrant preschool. And then charters have a board meeting today, but we also talk about charter pre-K. And so together we come up with our report. Okay, so the comparison, one of the things that we are tracking are the births in Hawaii. And so we use the Department of Health's vital statistics, and you can see that there were 14,846 births in 2023. And so children born in 2023 are going to be turning 3 next year and 4 the following year. And so this is how we kind of estimate our target of 50% of the currently unserved by 2027 and 100% of the currently unserved by 2032 benchmarking progress pieces. So we are looking at births. We know there's in and out migration. It's a little trickier to look at that, although some DOE reports recently did speak to that, but for our purposes, we're using it. So here's where we're at right now. So for EOEL in school year 22-23, there were 37 classrooms, and you can see we had 700 seats. Then the following year, there were 49 classrooms, 947 seats. And then this current school year, there are 92 classrooms with 1,767 seats. And then hopefully we will be expanding by 50 more classrooms over the next 2 years. Each classroom is in EOEL is limited to no more than 20 students at a time. However, we do utilize DHS's unencumbered square footage piece to determine the max capacity of each room, not to exceed 20, because a lot of our neighbor island school spaces we found, and some on Oahu, have smaller typical classroom sizes. So for charter schools, they have 18 classrooms. Oh, what's 92? That must be an error. I apologize. But so anyway, there are 18 classrooms, 327 seats, and that's kind of where they're standing right now. The charter school did receive funding to expand by 30 classrooms. The same time EOEL received our first 55. A lot of their challenges to progress include space, because they're located in many different kinds of campuses, but we do have some good news for charter schools. a little bit later on. I'm gonna ask Lauren to come up and talk about migrant ed pre-K. And sped pre-K.
Thank you for letting me join you today. The first table that we're looking at here is about our migrant education program. And that's a program that is specifically through federal funding, our Title I Part C specifically. And from the title, as you can see, it specifically serves families that are migrant. So focusing on children that are meeting that criteria. It's a small program. You can see our number of classrooms was 2, and then it became 3, and we're going to add this 4th classroom. They're all currently on Big Island. So that's just an area where we find that many families qualify, and that's an appropriate area of service for them. Very low teacher to student ratio in those classrooms. It's generally between 10 and 12 children in these particular classrooms. And then our special education preschool services, the department is responsible for children from ages 3 to 5 for that early childhood setting. And as you can see, we have a stable number of classrooms because we could have any number of children at any point that become eligible for special education services. But you can see that the seats available, therefore, is going to fluctuate based on need and based on number. So that number there for 24-25, that was a point in time data point that's reflective of number of IEPs. At any given point in a school year, a child may qualify for an IEP and require those services within that age range and therefore would be eligible. Something else that's super important to note is that some children within this data set are going to be on our school sites receiving 7:45 to 2:15 services, whereas others might actually not be attending a formal classroom setting in that time frame. And that's going to be driven by their individualized education plans, so their IEP. Do they require X, Y, and Z? Then that might require this type of servicing based on that child's individual disability and the needs that they have. And this program is also going to support those children that have IEPs, but are receiving educational services in another environment. And that can include our ELB classrooms for one, but as well as our preschool programs in the private sector, as well as Head Start. We have students all across the islands in a variety of settings that are going to be encompassed by this service provision.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so for DHS, these are the number of seats that are available. I want to notate that the number of seats here is based on a provider's license capacity. So it doesn't take into consideration whether a provider there has a different desired capacity. So provider's desired capacity could be less than what they're licensed for. But as you can see, it has decreased.
Sorry, I can go back.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no, it's even worse. Okay.
It has decreased significantly over the years. And then I also want to notate that the number of licensed and registered providers includes all group childcare centers, preschool, so preschools. It includes before and after school care programs, infant and toddler centers, and registered family childcare providers for these counts. Okay, and then this information, the numbers that are reported here, I'm sorry, but it's incorrect. These numbers are very, I think they're replicated from the slide before. These numbers were not, they include the before and after school providers, so it's going to be a lot less. So for the 2024 to 2025 year,
There were 600, sorry, this is from the October 2024 list of providers, because that's what was when we made that report. So that 785 number is inaccurate. It should be 678 providers serving 3 and 4-year-old children. And that does include infant and toddler centers who serve children up to 3 years old.
Is the seat still the same on this end? I'm not sure.
No, so I have to.
I can change this.
I don't have that information.
Yeah, no
right now.
The next table, that's our Child Care and Development Fund. That's our federally funded program for our KK. Just taking a snapshot at the 3 years, 22 to 24. And this pre-K range, I'd like to point out that a lot of the families, this is per child, I should say, select the licensed and registered providers over exempt providers. Exempt providers are our relative care, family friend or neighbor kind of care. But the breakdown here, it comes out to roughly 85% choose a licensed or registered provider, and about 15% select exempt. This portion is taken from our annual report to administration and children and families, where we focused on the 3 and 4-year-olds.
I have a question about the, the license or the exempt providers. Has that number, I know with the, when we changed the rules because of the 2014 reauthorization of CCDBG, there are more requirements on exempt providers if they want to receive a state subsidy, right? So, have you seen, it looks like there's been a decline and then I guess there has been a decline in exempt providers getting subsidy, right? So that's the ones that we can track. We don't know, we can't know about the ones that, grandma's watching, but they're just not getting the subsidy. So these are people getting subsidies, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So the next table, this is from Acts 46 from Session Laws of Hawaii 2020, Act 210 from 21, and Act 169 from 23. This is where they establish all licensed providers except enrollment of a preschool open doors eligible child must be accredited within 7 years. And for existing providers, they would have had to start their accreditation process in July 1st, 2029. So this table, I'll focus on 24. Our providers with our preschool open door KG, 68 of them are accredited. So we would probably have focused on the 120 that do not have that accreditation.
Got a comment on something. So I just wanted to say that one of the bills we have been testifying on is the preschool open doors one that is, because the state has made available a whole bunch of money, but it hasn't been utilized as well as we hope. So the Lieutenant Governor had asked that this bill be introduced, I think. Jen can correct me if I'm wrong, but that lets go of the requirement to be in the process for accreditation in order to accept preschool open doors subsidy. So if that gets to the end, then that hopefully will expand the number of programs that will accept families with the preschool open door subsidy. But the requirement for DHS to provide support for accreditation is still in the statute. What's gonna be, what's proposed to be deleted is the requirement to be in that process to get POD subsidy. But support for accreditation will still be there. So I think that's something to really be aware of, and DHS is working on that. So thank you very much.
Sure, so I would say my understanding is the goal is in collaboration between oriented services, HCAT and
Okay, the bill. Okay, thank you.
So ELB collects information on family-child interaction learning programs. So in 2022, 2023, we had a list of 28 sites that considered themselves family-child interaction learning programs, and 56 this current year. For the purpose of this report, it's looking at 3- and 4-year-olds who are enrolled in the program. But because FCIL programs serve from prenatal all the way to 5, we have not yet been able to get an accurate count of how many 3- and 4-year-olds are participating in these programs, but we are still working towards that. And we are also still learning about more FCIL programs that are out there in the community that may not be under the umbrellas of the ones that we typically associate with FCIL programs.
And just to let you know, for next month, Elaine will be here to give an overview of family-child interaction learning programs.
Perfect. And for those of you who may not know, ELEU is a group of 3 entities that are one group that supports FCIL programs. So ELEU is In Peace, Partners in Development, and Kikioka Aina. We know them to be very familiar with offering FCIL programs. We have found that there are others that sit outside of ELEU that are in the community, and we're starting to continue to look for them and gather them. And the reason for this is we do work with the Department of Education. So when families report on has your child had any prior early learning experience, we're getting some of this information coming through that data source too. Oh, sorry, yes.
I just see a question in the chat from Barbara at Center on the Family. So she asks, is my understanding correct? Table 6C includes count of children receiving CCDF subsidies, while table 6D is a number of providers serving children who receive POD. That's true, yes. Yes. Barbara, that's what it is. Thank you for asking.
And so when we take a look at some progress that has been made since we started this report, EOEL at the time of our last report had 44 classrooms and opened up 44 classrooms and 120 seats. Charter schools have now, I believe it's open, I think, or it's supposed to open this month, but Parkway Villages of Kapolei. So the charter schools have also created a pre-K only charter school application. And so that's their contribution to increasing capacity and seats. And then AHS.
Yeah. So through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, Hawaii DHS was appropriated approximately 79 million in stabilization grant funds and 49 million in supplemental discretionary funds. DHS administered 2 grant programs, the stabilization grant program and the supplemental grant program. The grant programs were intended to prevent permanent closures and support childcare businesses by offsetting their operating expenses, improving quality and increasing workforce compensation so that the childcare providers can recruit and retain a skilled workforce. In the stabilization grant program, we distributed nearly $72 million directly to 616 licensed centers, registered family childcare homes, and legally exempt center providers between December 2021 and September 2023. And then our recent supplemental grant program, we dispersed $40.8 million directly to providers. Providers received 2 rounds of funding. They used it towards operating expenses, and staff retention awards were dispersed. So directors, teachers, assistant teachers, lead caregivers, and caregivers received a disbursement of $4,500, and all other caregiving staff received a disbursement of $3,000. Family childcare providers received $2.8 million in operation payments and $488,000 in staff retention bonuses. Group childcare centers received $20.6 million in operation payments and $5 million in staff retention bonuses. Group childcare homes received $58,500 in operation payments and $32,000 in staff retention bonuses. And infant and toddler centers received $4 million in operation payments and $1.3 million in staff retention bonuses. Our before and after school providers received $585,000 in operation payments, $209,000 in staff retention bonuses, and the exempt before and after school providers operating A+ programs received $3.89 million in operation payments and $1.5 million in staff retention bonuses. So we received a lot of great feedback from providers who received the funding. It helped keep their doors open. It helped maintain their capacity and provide they're able to staff as best as they can and provide the number of childcare seats. Thank you.
And then when we look at progress on accessibility and affordability, for accessibility, one of the feedback that EOEL had received was that we should also offer an online application because a lot of people who go out into the communities and try to get families connected to programs were having a difficult time helping families access and complete the EOEL public pre-K application. So we moved forward with our online application development over the last year and a half. And as Kulile reported earlier, it's now fully functioning and we can actually port out and communicate information to the Department of Education. And also we're looking at trying to also port out to Head Start, because that is typically in our application if families are interested in wanting to learn more about Head Start, and also to home visiting through your Opana. Another point was a couple of years ago, we had learned that charter schools have always had 3- and 4-year-olds. And then they were looking at the expansion of preschool open doors to 3- and 4-year-olds. And at that time, EOEL was only serving 4-year-olds. So to make the whole system aligned and easier for families to understand, we were able to add 3-year-olds. So now charters have 3s and 4s, EOEL was 3s and 4s, and preschool open doors were 3s and 4s. And then the federal poverty guidelines, they were, realigned and taken a look at for our affordability. And then DHS.
So for the preschool open doors expansion, so from Act 171, from the 2023 session of employee, it allowed DHS to focus on changes and effectuate change for the preschool open doors program for this current, the 24-25 program year. So our expansion, it included the addition of the 3-year-olds. So this would now allow families up to 2 years of early learning prior to their child's entry into kindergarten. We looked at increasing the income eligibility limits. So more families would be, could potentially qualify. So previously, if they tried, we're asking them to try again. So they may have been over at that time, but now, like Eva said, our increased limits, we're at 300% of the federal poverty level for the current year. We lowered our family co-payments from 0 to 7%. And that's looking at the family's gross income. So hoping that families have less out-of-pocket expenses for childcare. And then the last one, we also looked at increasing the monthly childcare subsidy amount. And this was to cover the costs of providing the quality childcare. So we have 2 tiers, our accredited rate and our non-accredited rate. I'm so happy to share that POD is off to a great start. I can talk about the 24-25 program. We recently concluded the application period for this current school year as of January 31st. I have February's numbers. So POD is supporting 2,236 children. 1,040 of them are 4-year-olds and 1,196 are 3 years old. And this is our statewide total. We launched the preschool open doors priority application period on February 18th. And this will continue until April 30th of this 2025. And we're looking at the 25-26 year. So families with children born between August 1st, 2020 and July 31st, 2022 are eligible to apply. And very encouraging to see that we did receive 419 applications during our opening week. And that was February 18th to the 21st. We had a holiday too, so that was nice to see. And as of last week, I took a peek, we're over 1,000 applications. So I am pleased that families are receiving the information through our media campaigns and also, our Coconut Wireless connection too. Nice to see. A majority of our applications are received through our online portal. So last program year, about 66% of our applicants chose to submit that way. We do also have the paper applications that Patch helps us process. And this year too, this current program year, this current program year, we're at 66% of the applicants submitting. 24, we had almost 3,000 online applications, and that was about 58% of the applicants submitting. And lastly, I just want to share that the department is moving forward with other important amendments. So we'll see how this session plays out. And going to continue working on this expansion, our delivery of services. Thank you.
And then again, as EOEL has been reporting, we have our stipend program and our apprenticeships, and we've been reporting on our progress of our workforce development. And so I can just turn it over to DHS.
Okay, so I have some raw data. This wasn't included in our reports from the supplemental grant program. Providers reported that during that period, which was from January 2024 to November 2024, 215 providers reported staff turnover during the grant program. 755 staff members left during the grant program, mostly in group childcare centers, exempt before and after school programs, and infant and toddler services. But 243 providers reported hiring a total of 523 new staff during the grant period. So doesn't quite, equal out, but, we'd like to think that if it wasn't for the grant program, that we'd see the numbers a lot higher. And then in December 2024, the department contracted with the Hawaii Association for the Education of Young Children to provide technical assistance for up to 20 group childcare centers that are interested in obtaining that NAEYC accreditation. So like Chair pointed out, the requirement for POD providers was that they providers that are not accredited by NAEYC, NECPA, or NECPA, had to start the accreditation process by July 1st, 2029, and be accredited by July 1st, 2034. So I don't have any updated numbers for the number of group childcare centers that are going through that TA accreditation process yet, but hoping that I can provide it at the next meeting. That'd be good. And funding for the TA accreditation program could be used on expenses that are necessary for the childcare provider to obtain accreditation, which could include workforce development.
And so now we're gonna look at the progress on data collection and analysis. And so I can just speak to ELB's partnership with P20 when we're looking at our Attainment Academy goals and looking at when we're looking at workforce, when we're looking at prior early learning experience, when we're looking at the kindergarten entry assessment, which you can see is also aligned here. And so P20 and the Department of Education have been great partners in helping to clean the data and to take a look at things that we're feeding incorrect data. And Lauren has been very helpful in helping us facilitate some of those conversations as well. Some of it is just trying to take a look at how do we collect it, and does it really make sense to the families in the way that we're asking, and is that why the data is not coming out really correctly? So, taking a look at those pieces. And then for our fiscal map, so again, EOEL and ECAS are working with the Children's Funding Project to look at data collection of what are all of the sources of funding that are coming into Hawaii for children from prenatal all the way up until 20-something years old. And so hopefully that should be coming out sometime soon. They did offer some departments a little bit more time to sift through the data so that we could have a more accurate representation. But that's still moving along as well. And then for let's see. And then also the Hawaii DOE is developing the Kaiapuni KEA in Olelo, Hawaii for the Hawaii immersion kindergarten classrooms. And was it field tested this year? Did it get the field? Okay, and it was field tested this year. Okay. And then
So for the DHS Childcare Registry, in November 2024, together with Patch, we launched the new Hawaii Early Childhood Workforce Registry platform. Practitioners now have the ability to update their early childhood qualifications online, access their registry records, and upload evidence of their professional development achievements. Program administrators and directors of programs also have the ability to manage their own programs. They're able to see their current staff listings with their qualifications and education of their staff. By having this online workforce registry system, we hope to not only eliminate the long processing times where practitioners before would have to mail in their registry applications and supporting documents, But we're hoping that the online platform can also serve as a tool to collect more data about the early childhood workforce and help to inform us in the community on how we can improve and grow the workforce. So there may be some questions for practitioners to complete when they access their registry record, which are completely voluntary. But we want to encourage participation. And then any results are kept, they're anonymized. So, you know, we won't ever identify, you know, the individual practitioner or the providers.
Yeah, that's huge. It's a
Yeah.
long time coming. Thank you.
And and so there's also another progress update on this report. And you can find all of these reports on the ELB website. On the top bar running across the top of our website, there's a tab that's called Research. And under Research, it's called Legislative Updates. And you can find all of the reports that EOEL has submitted, but these reports, this report and these reports are also on our website. And thank you.
Questions from people from the board?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, Elaine. I just think we should take a moment to recognize and celebrate the progress that's been made. Like it's the data, and maybe because it's Zoom, it's a little hard to like, you know, feel it with one another, but like the expansion of services, including but not limited to classrooms, is pretty darn impressive. So just kudos to everybody on the good work. And yeah, it's exciting to see across all sectors, more classrooms, charter schools, Hawaiian immersion, EOEL. Yeah, really cool to see an expansion of the work. So kudos, especially to Yuko.
Any comments or questions from the board? Thank you very much. So I'm hoping that, you know, as we're moving forward, we're getting a better idea of the big picture of all the stuff that's going on. And it's really great to see the progress. And I have to tell, I wanted to acknowledge DHS as they gave out the we're working on distributing the ARPA funding. They figured out a way to have programs that are faith-based, which are pretty common on neighbor islands. Maybe not as common here, but a lot of faith-based programs on neighbor islands, and those programs were able to access funding by stating what percentage of their program was strictly faith-based. And so it was a way, I thought it was just genius. I thought I was like, oh, Tina, you go. You know, that it was a great way to let them access to funding that normally without that, they would have been just cut out of, you know, they would not have been able to access that funding. So it was less, but they were able to access it. And like my own church, I know they accessed it. So, you know, it was really great. So thank you so much. So yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, it is important for us to celebrate all the progress that is happening. So thank you very much.
Public comment?
Yeah, of course.
No. You have to say public comment.
Oh, public, oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Any comments or questions from the public? Hey, hearing none? Or seeing any, you know, I think I should announce at the beginning that if you do have a comment or question from the public, you could put it in chat and then we could see that. But thank you for the reminder, Phil. because I do need reminders, so thank you so much. So the next thing, let's see, okay, I'm going to share screen. Yes, and refresh. Okay, wait. Okay. Okay, so, oh, slideshow. Okay. So this proposed policy for the mixed delivery system, the components, see, oh, so this is, it's not fully developed. Okay, the only thing that really is developed is the system principles that are linked in the agenda, and these were developed by the board. And there are very solid principles for the board. I can see if I can get there. Oh, ta-ta. So this is for the board, that we would demonstrate these qualities of integrity, transparency, collaboration with partners, accountability, fairness and equity. Oh, is that a word we have to take up? No, stop. Honesty and trust and diversity. Our systems principles. So these, again, this is what really would, we need to keep in mind. These were developed and they're very solid system principles. So it promotes nurturing and responsive relationships that are essential for healthy growth and development, and values each child's development within a culture and a language, considers each child as unique, respects each child's development as a whole, and acknowledges development begins before birth and continues throughout life. You know, when I was in college, I was told that my brain cells start dying at 20, and I was like, okay, wow, here we go. But at least research has shown since then that that's not true. Maintains a strong, sustainable, evidence-based professional system framework that's essential to maintains a strong, sustainable, evidence-based professional, I think, development system, framework is essential to children's growth and development. Regards that all children are children first, and infants and toddlers are active learners, and they learn through play. And values everyone in a child's life playing a role in his or her development. So those are principles that already exist. Governance and coordination, we do have some governance set out in statute for us. So that can be developed on that. The coordination piece, excuse me, like we discussed earlier, is a trickier piece, but I really think that we can do it in Hawaii. Funding and sustainability, so that the fiscal map is going to be really crucial to developing. But what we would be looking at is, you know, saying things like, we're not going to supplant funding. We want to make sure that the funding, all the different funding sources supplement each other, and you know, we try to avoid duplication. I don't think there's duplication. We need all the funding that we can get at this point. But we would be looking at that kind of thing. Workforce development, there's a lot of work happening on workforce development, and program of quality and accountability. We've heard how that is being supported. It's in family engagement and support, so we've been hearing about that. Infrastructure and accessibility, and so the report that was just given really helps illustrate that, and then also data systems. So these are right now the broad categories. Okay, and I did ask ChatGPT, can you create, what do you keep policy, create a policy for early childhood or mixed development, mixed delivery in early childhood in the state of Hawaii. And so, you know, at least it gave these broad categories that I thought were really useful, but you know, this is not set in stone, and I don't want to do it by myself because I get stuck. I need other people to bounce off of, and so I'm thinking. So I just am asking everybody to think about this. But what I'm thinking is that we need, you know, and I need deadlines. Like if people give me a deadline, then I'm good. So just to let you guys know, okay, you don't give me a deadline, it's like whatever. Deadlines. I guess I work well under pressure, but I'm thinking that we need to have stakeholders get together to outside of the board to get together to really give input into this policy or into the components of this policy that would eventually come back to the board. And again, board members could be involved in different parts of this. So, you know, I'm just starting to think out loud. So I'm just letting you guys know, and I appreciate hearing thoughts. It could be that, you know, maybe these could be chunked and groups could, you know, convene around one or two of these areas, or is it each area? So anyway, just wanted to put that forward. I want to ask if there's a category that feels missing to you, or that one of these is not appropriate. Is anything jumping out to anyone? Really, if anything does come to you, let me know, because I really would like people's mana'o and contributions to figure out how we do this well, right? So we're working towards getting a policy. We're a policy-making board. We want to have this kind of broad policy that would help guide work as we go forward. So again, and then it would have to be the state plan factors into that. So I think when I thought about that chart that you showed, and where does the state plan sit in all of that? But I think a mixed delivery system policy could kind of help move us together towards a coordinated system. The first 5 stuff that Lane shared, the South Carolina system is like unreal. It's pretty awesome if you go on that website, and it is really cool. And that's what I've been wanting to do is like, yeah, go on your phone, you put in your information, and boom, here's what you're eligible for. Because everybody does it on their phone nowadays. So anyway, as I was rambling, did any thoughts come to anybody on the board? Or public? Anything? Okay. I just wanted to put that forward. Does that make sense?
Wouldn't something like this be part of the plan? Or, I mean,
That's a really good question. I think, you know, all of this exists, okay? A lot of this stuff, this would kind of articulate it and put it in one place, but should it be part of, I think, no, I think that's a good question. How do we look at it? Yeah. How do we, it is that question of how the state plan will interact with the board and policies and stuff. So let's keep thinking about that. Thank you. Thanks for the question. Any other questions or comments? More, I'm going to go to. Well, there's a public comment. Oh, that's on. So agenda outcomes. We did approve our minutes. We had the discussion on the state plan, and we'll continue to think about that, and I think, you know, good questions, interesting questions, are important. I used to say, you know, there are degrees of questions, and I think we need to continue to have those interesting questions that challenge our thinking and how we are putting all of this together. So the state plan was reviewed. We had all the presentation about all the things that are happening with Act 46 and all those indicators, and continuing to think about the mixed delivery system policy and how it is created. And mahalo again to Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Seed Center, Christina and Lynette, and Kevin, yay, magic Kevin. And then the quote for today is from the father of kindergarten. Play is the highest expression of human development in childhood. For it alone is the free expression of what is in a child's soul. So thank you, everybody, for nurturing children's souls and go play with somebody. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.